There we go. We're back on.
Well, I don't want to take too much time. Bottom line is that the power is in the people, the local people here. The power is not with government. We respect government. We know we need government. But as this ballot is proposed, the ballot is a contract. It says it right on the document. And so if we, the people, sign that contract, you are giving the power to use your own water away. And that's not your intent by any means, and I don't think that's the intent of any of the people here. Are there any state agencies or agents here from the state? Everybody's local.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state wants to take your water rights away, and they can't own your water because it's already been granted with land patents back in the early 1800s. So it's already granted, so they don't own water unless they buy it. Okay, but they can control it if you volunteer to allow them to control it. And the way they plan on controlling it is when you sign that ballot, you look at the ballot, it mentions contract 4 times. That's because it's not a ballot, it's not a lawful ballot. If you look at the definition of a ballot, it's not lawful, but it is a contract. And once you sign that contract, you are allowing them to tell you that you can pump or not pump and how much you can pump. And they also will allocate your water. That's in the documents. I don't know if you read them all. But so anyway, that's my concern. And what I would like to do is have a meeting with the people so I can explain this to you and explain where your power is. And then you need to stand up. And unfortunately, we will sue. The people will sue. We'll start at the state level. And then if we can't, because there's what's called coordination, it's a NEPA and FLIPMA. In law, government agencies must, and I say shall, comply with local policy. So simply, if you people establish policy and you present it to the counties, to the cities, to the state in law, real law, not SMU, in real law, those agencies must coordinate. That's the magic word. And you will see coordinate in those documents as well. That's the magic word, coordinate. So they must coordinate with you and comply to you, to your policies. So it's that simple. And I agree, we do want to help the water, but they do not offer, I see not one offer to resolve the issue. Which the only way you can resolve pumping is to what? Supply surface water. They don't intend on doing that. Go back to 2014 when we passed Proposition 1. It's supposed to be $7.5 billion for water storage. Did anybody identify maybe $1 that's been spent in the last 10 years for water storage? So why would we believe that government is going to help us? Because this whole process is a schedule for failure. Because the only solution is, number one, you stop farming and stop pumping water. That's the only solution. Unless they produce water. And they have a responsibility to do that, a fiduciary responsibility to do that. So I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's pay when this is offered.
Thank you. We've got some more handouts there. If you don't have a copy of the presentation or the proposal, we're looking to grab one there. Anyone else from the public want to make a comment before we move on to the agenda item? Okay, so hands raised, nobody else in the room. We'll move on to the next item. First thing I'd like to do, though, I would like to take item number 7 out of sequence and move it to follow item number 4. I won't surprise you there, but we'll move on to 3 first. Does anybody else want to take an item out of sequence, move things around? Yeah. Item number 3 is approval of the October 11th, 2023 meeting minutes. Assuming everybody's had a chance to take a look at those, I'll entertain a motion. Thanks, Mike. Do a second.
Second.
Second, thank you. Motion by Mike. Second by John. Thank you. I'll open up for any comments from the member agencies first. Committee. Comments, questions? No. All right, we'll open it up to the public. Comments, questions on the minutes? Hearing none, seeing none. Well, oh, okay.
Copy of comments, please,
Sorry.
from that workshop.
These were minutes from our actual meeting. The workshop was a landowner meeting. Yeah, we didn't take.
I got some from Sandy.
Christy,
but.
that was a county-led workshop, so I don't know if you did you take any minutes then?
No, I think Mr. Ortega was asking, if there's any comments that the GSA received that might be available for, public request.
I think we can leave that up to you and him after this meeting, but we can talk about it. I don't think that's a problem. But it's up to you. It's really up to you. It's your,
Was there anything in addition? The county provided, some information with the comments that we received directly. Was there anything in addition that the GSA provided?
no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But
That's the question.
yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Members of the public? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 4. This is to amend the 2024 STRGBA GSA budget. So unfortunately, we're going to talk later in this meeting. The next few items are going to be related to the determination that our GSP was found incomplete, that determination made by DWR. Because of that determination, we're going to have to come back and amend the GSP and do a number of other things, or at least a number of other things are recommended by our consultants. So there's a proposal that is reflected in this amended GSP with a 15% roughly contingency on it. So we added $330,000 to the budget this year. Unfortunately, it wasn't expected. Couldn't plan for it because we were hoping our plan was going to move forward. And even if we did plan to have to redo it, we really didn't know what kind of comments they were going to have. So, wish we could have planned for that, but we couldn't. So, first thing we'd like to do is approve the budget before we move on to talking about the proposal. So we have money to pay for the proposal if we do inside groundwater. And then we will specifically, and that's why I wanted to move 7 up after this topic, talk about the determination by DWR and exactly what their concerns were and what those deficiencies were. So in this operating budget that was attached as part of the agenda report, I should note a couple of things. So the 4th item down says preparation. That's actually grant preparation. We put $25,000 in the budget for grant preparation. So just to clarify that, because grant got cut off there. The other thing there is little bit of a discrepancy on the bottom, and I've talked to Christy about this too to clarify. So when we do our budget, our annual budget is typically split per the MOU, per our MOU, 7 ways amongst the 7 member agencies. However, because there are 2 GSAs in the basin, Tuolumne County GSA does share proportionally in the cost for annual reports and GSP preparation. So that would be included on this amendment. So the amendment item, and then also the annual report item, so the 330,000 and the 190,000, that would be split 8 ways. So each of us would pay 1/8. The county would end up paying 2/8, 2/8 or a quarter. And so half of that would be reimbursed to the county through Tuolumne County. The balance of those budget items to make up the total at 586, the balance was subtracted of, with those 2 things subtracted, is split 7 ways. So that 73 is a little off. We'll end up giving you a specific number after the meeting here if we take action for this. But I wanted to make sure that that was clear in this item. So I'll open it up for any comments, questions from the member agencies first on the budget?
The amendments to cover the
Proposal, yeah. All the rest of it stays the same. Anything else? Okay, we'll move it up to the public for comments. Questions on the budget, amendment to the budget. Yes, sir.
He said, the DWR requested that you have $330,000.
Do you mind speaking to the microphone for me? Sorry, we want to, that's how she records minutes and everything too.
I can speak loud.
You can hold it, you can keep it there by if you want.
The DWR has requested a $300,000 increase on the budget.
So no, they have deemed our plan incomplete because of a couple of deficiencies they identified in our plan, in our GSP. So the proposal to address those deficiencies is going to cost us $330,000. That's including a 15% contingency, just to make sure that we have enough money in our budget to cover those
And
costs.
to whom does that money go to?
The costs, those are to the consultant, to pay the consultant to prepare the plan, the amendments to the plan.
And then what percentage of the gross income for the farmers that are paying this? What percentage of that is 300,000? And basically the whole budget. What percentage of total income to the people or other people?
So there's 7 member agencies here. So you've got the city of Modesto, 4 cities essentially.
No, I'm not about the farmers.
That's, yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer. It's already in the budget for OID and in the budget for MID,
I guess I can.
the agency
get a
budget.
copy of that budget sometime.
Yeah, no, this is the budget for our group. This is the budget, and then it's 7 member agencies.
And by the way, you wouldn't be dealing with this. Did your original proposal, did you really think that was gonna work?
Yes, we did.
Okay, well then
Yeah.
why would you allow the DWR to dictate to you what you will be doing and cost you another $330,000? Because
Unfortunately,
if you coordinate, remember, if you coordinate, you tell them what you're gonna do and they must comply. Okay? I'm
Thank you.
trying to make a point here, people.
Thanks.
Hey, well. This thing doesn't turn off very easily.
You just gotta hold it down.
Ah, that's the secret, okay.
Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Sean Hembry with Tuolumne County, Water and Natural Resource Analyst with Tuolumne County. And my question is the additional 300,000 approximately dollars added to the budget is being proposed is in addition to the recent sub-agreement that was signed between Tuolumne County and Stanislaus County. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, the agreement with City of Modesto essentially was for the GSP update, the next GSP update in 2027, and then also the annual reports that we have to do each year. So this is above and beyond that.
So I should just clarify then that did pass the board under consent at Tuolumne County's recent board meeting. So that part is clear. However, I should just state also that it puts Tuolumne County in a little bit of a difficult situation because we don't have any privileges as a voting member to this body and how the decisions are being made. And we can pay a substantial amount and equal amount in terms of costs, where the amount of parcels that are actually represented are not at all equal. So maybe that's something we could take under consideration as we talk about increasing the budget for that, either decreasing the cost or providing some sort of mechanism for Tuolumne County to have a say in how the money is distributed and spent and otherwise managed.
Yeah, unfortunately, Christy can speak to this better than I can, but I think the original thought at least was as 2 GSAs in the basin needing to have one plan or 2 plans, you could have done, Tuolumne County, for example, could have done their own plan, which would have been much more expensive, you would think. The savings was that that are there are 2 GSAs doing one plan together, and then hence the reason Tuolumne County was sharing on that cost. This is part of going back to that original GSP. It was found incomplete, and so hence the reason the county would be responsible for contributing their fair share to get that original GSP all the way through to approval. But yeah, we're all facing difficulties with the budget issue and unexpected costs. But thank you. Do you have anything else to add on that?
Well, I think that the GSA should consider options in case Tuolumne County wanted to pursue the ability to become a new member agency. Is that something that we would think about maybe discussing further, or is that something that you think that Tuolumne County wants to pursue? I think it's two separate issues. Tuolumne County is supporting the development and implementation of the GSP and the response to the incomplete determination. And the other issue is that, we're two separate GSAs. So we'd have to change the structure and the governance of the GSAs in order to address that in the best way that we could potentially agree upon it.
And it's a conundrum. That question has not been brought to the county.
Yeah, and it was originally decided that Tuolumne County didn't really have to become a GSA. We could have been one GSA and covered that area, but Tuolumne County wanted to, my understanding was they wanted to represent that sliver that was in the county, but not necessarily be part of this GSA and have to share in all of the costs that we have. So that's why I say there's, $586,000, $586,500, and Tuolumne County is sharing in an eighth of the 520 of that, because that's the bulk of the cost is the annual report and the GSP amendment. So there is some savings in Tuolumne County doing that. It's just that the GSP obviously is we're having some difficulty with that, and that is definitely the highest cost of the agency each and every year so far. Luckily, I could change in the future, but yeah. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, so now we'll move from 4 on to number 7 to talk more about the 2022 STRGBA GSA GSP incomplete determination by DWR, and then an update about the DWR, our first consultation meeting with them. And Liz, I think you're going to help lead this conversation, if you didn't mind.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So this is Liz from Todd Groundwater. She was very active in preparing our GSP.
Yes. Hi, everyone. As Eric said, my name is Liz Elliott. I work with Todd Groundwater, and thanks so much for having me. So today, this agenda item, I'm going to summarize the determination letter and provide an overview of our proposed approach for responding to the state. As Eric has said, DWR sent a letter to the GSA on January 18th, indicating that their review of the GSP was finished and they deemed it to be incomplete. The state identified 2 different deficiencies. Each deficiency had a corrective action. So by law, by Sigma law, the GSA has 180 days to revise the GSP, and the revised GSP is due July 16th. Just 2 days ago, on the 12th, we had our first initial consultation meeting with DWR to talk about the deficiencies and ask some general and some technical questions about our approach. So, like I said, I'm going to summarize the determination letter and also talk a little bit about our approach for responding to it. So the first deficiency indicates that the GSP does not provide sufficient information to support the selection of chronic lowering of groundwater levels sustainable management criteria. And the corrective action for this deficiency indicates that the GSAs must provide more detailed explanation and justification regarding the selection for the sustainable management criteria for the chronic lowering of groundwater sustainability indicator. And there are 3 recommendations as part of this corrective action. The first recommendation is that DWR would like an assessment to understand the impacts to beneficial uses and users from continued overdraft, including what impacts may result if groundwater levels reach the established interim milestones in 2027. The GSP should include a well impact analysis identifying the anticipated number and location of wells that may go dry during the 20-year implementation period based on the proposed interim milestones. And I'll remind you that the Modesto Subbasin GSP defined interim milestones below the minimum thresholds for the representative monitoring wells in 2 management areas, the Oakdale Irrigation District management area, as well as the non-district east management area. And this was a recognition that groundwater levels in these areas were declining. And it was a recognition that it would take time for projects and management actions to be implemented and to have an effect on groundwater levels. And so it was, saying that groundwater levels would continue to decline below MTs, but during the first 5 years of implementation, and then would rebound and recover to the MTs and then above. So to respond to this first part of this corrective action, the proposed approach is to conduct a well impact analysis. And this well impact analysis will be relative to both minimum thresholds and interim milestones. So what we're going to be doing is building a database of the supply wells in the subbasin, which will include domestic, irrigation, and municipal wells from publicly available information from DWR, as well as information that we've gotten from the member agencies. And we're going to look at the well construction information relative to the minimum threshold groundwater elevation and relative to the IM groundwater elevation. And any well that may go dry or be vulnerable between the MT and the IM level is potentially impacted by groundwater levels going below the MT. So that is our approach for that analysis, that first part of that corrective action. The second part of the corrective action is the state indicates that the GSA should describe how impacts to wells experienced at the IM levels below the MTs will be managed or mitigated. And so the proposed approach is to develop a well mitigation plan. There are lots of questions that need to be considered during development of this plan, including what types of wells will be included, the number of wells, where the wells may be, during implementation, how will well owners report dry wells to the GSAs? How will the GSAs investigate these reports? Will the GSAs mitigate the dry wells? Under what circumstances, and if so, how? And the state also wants this well mitigation plan to include information, financial information. So the estimated costs of the program and the funding sources. And so during our initial meeting with DWR a couple of days ago, we asked them about this part of the mitigation plan, because these financial questions are going to take time and stakeholder input to figure out, and 180 days isn't long enough to figure that out. And the state recognizes that, and so they said we can submit a plan that's not 100% complete. So we can submit a well mitigation plan that does not have these financial questions completely answered yet, as long as we provide a timeline for getting this figured out and a schedule for implementing the plan. And so the third part of the first corrective action indicates that the GSA should revise the GSP to include an analysis describing whether or how managing the subbasin to allow groundwater levels to drop to the interim milestone levels that are below the established minimum thresholds will avoid causing undesirable results for other sustainability indicators. DWR indicates that the GSA should analyze how groundwater levels at the IMs will avoid causing undesirable results for other sustainability indicators. And so our proposed approach for responding to this is to do an analysis of groundwater levels at the IMs, where IMs are defined below the MTs, and look at potential effects on the land subsidence, degradation of groundwater quality, and depletion of interconnected surface water sustainability indicators. And I will say for the interconnected surface water, we've defined interim milestones for some of the wells along the rivers. There are no wells that have IMs along the San Joaquin River. There are 3 wells along the Stanislaus River, and that's out of 8 that are in the network that have IMs along the Stanislaus River. and 2 out of 10 wells have IMs along the Tuolumne River. So there are some, but it's not the complete length of the river that we need to look at, just where the IMs are. So moving on to deficiency number 2. So before I start talking about this one, the first deficiency, which I just summarized, is going to require, a technical analysis and, well mitigation plan. And deficiency number 2 has to do with projects and management actions. And this is the bigger lift of the two. And deficiency number 2 states that the GSP does not include sufficient details of projects and management actions to mitigate overdraft in the subbasin or provide a feasible path to achieve sustainability. And the corrective action for this deficiency indicates that the GSA should revise the GSP to provide specific details of feasible projects and management actions that will be implemented to mitigate overdraft and that will raise groundwater levels from the IM levels towards the MTs and measurable objectives in order to achieve sustainability in the subbasin. And there are 2 recommendations that are part of this corrective action. The first one indicates that the GSA should revise the GSP to include a reasonable means to arrest groundwater level declines and stop the overdraft that is continuing to occur in the subbasin. Specifically, the GSA should describe feasible, effective proposed projects and management actions that are commensurate with the level of understanding of groundwater conditions in the subbasin and provide sufficient details for department staff to be able to clearly evaluate how the plan's projects and management actions will ensure achieving the sustainability goal. So the conclusion here is that DWR does not think the GSP includes sufficient details of or commitment to implementation of projects and management actions. So the approach is to include more information and more detail about projects and management actions. This is going to require a commitment to specific, I'm sorry.
No, keep going, you're right.
Okay, sorry. So this will require the GSAs to commit to projects and management actions with planning level estimates of engineering, economics, financial feasibility, and a schedule of implementation. DWR wants a timeline that shows when these will be implemented, and they want a description of also the PMAs that are already underway, and we know that there are projects underway. And the second part of this corrective action, DWR states that the GSA should revise the GSP to include a feasible collection of projects and management actions to raise groundwater levels to avoid undesirable results that would occur as a result of groundwater levels dropping below the MTs towards the proposed IMs. So our approach for this is to evaluate the existing suite of projects and management actions that are already in the GSP and refine the details of these. The assumption is that we don't need new projects and management actions in the GSP. We just need to reanalyze the existing group that we have in the GSP. And therefore, because we're not going to be adding new PMAs to the GSP, we're not going to need to rerun the model and simulate the effects of new PMAs, which makes this response a little bit more straightforward than if we had to do that. So that, in summary, is the letter. I also wanted to take you through the proposed tasks in our scope of work. And so I'd like to share my screen if I can.
Let's wait to do that real quick, just pause there, because that's essentially item number 7. And this is just the discussion.
Sure.
And then next, we'll get to your proposal and the schedule and everything for the next item, if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. So one thing I will add to that, first off, is that we did get a chance to meet with DWR. And we had the advantage before you put together the proposal that's going to follow this item. We did get the advantage of having Turlock meet with them first, because the Turlock Basin also, their plan was also found to be incomplete for very similar reasons, right, Liz? So
yes, almost the letters were almost identical.
Yeah. So we had the advantage of having that proposal put together and that meeting after the city where the Turlock Basin had their meeting. So we feel like it's the direction that they would like us to go at this point. It's going to be it's going to be a heavy lift. There's a lot to do. has to be done within 180 days and turned in, so it's gonna be a pretty tight schedule moving forward. So we all just need to understand that. Yeah. So with that, any other committee comments here, questions about the determination?
A quick question. Liz.
I think your
where-
mic, there you go, perfect.
Oh, Liz, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Can you just give a little more information and brief about, where and why the IMs were established at the rivers?
Oh, at the rivers, yes. So the IMs were established within the OID and the non-district east management areas. So where those management areas are next to the river is where the IMs are along the rivers. So it's in the eastern part of the subbasin, central and eastern.
So are those areas more vulnerable to effects associated with declining water levels? Is that why there was only a few established and not along the whole lengths of the river?
Yeah, the reason why the IMs were only established for those two management areas is because those two management areas are in the eastern subbasin, and that's where we have seen historically declining groundwater levels. And so the IMs, again, were sort of a recognition that those water levels were declining and would take time to rebound and recover from projects and management actions.
That makes sense.
But we had planned for the inner milestones, under the inner milestones, those minimum thresholds, we're gonna exceed those minimum thresholds, at least with the first interim milestone, the 5-year, basically in 5 years. We had planned on being below those minimum thresholds for both the sustainable or the interconnected surface water on some of those wells being the east and in OID, the eastern part of OID's service area because of what you just said. But there are also several wells like that are we're expecting the same thing under just the groundwater levels itself. And I think there's more because there's wells that are included that aren't necessarily right next to the water, next to the river rather.
Yeah, most of the wells that have IMs are not next to the river. You're right.
And we'll end up going through those and kind of highlighting those. We'll have the opportunity at least in one of the next presentations that we have on the item number 8, the fall groundwater level analysis. So you can show us what wells those are specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have maps in that presentation that show the management areas.
Anything else from the member agencies? We're going out to the public. Okay. I've got one hand up, Mike Day on the phone.
Yeah, so the way I read DWR's letter is basically the fear is that more wells are going to go dry, which we know that is going to happen. It's been happening. But is DWR basically saying the GSA needs to come up with the plan to mitigate those wells going dry and saddle the GSA with the cost of doing that? Was that the discussion?
We didn't discuss the specifics of how the well mitigation plan would be developed, but yes, that is what DWR would like. DWR wants the GSAs to develop a well mitigation plan to address the wells that may go dry during GSP implementation. And that means for the next 20 years. And also, you know, they're especially focused on the first 5 years where we're saying the groundwater levels will dip below the MTs to the IM levels. We did a cursory analysis in the GSP of where wells were vulnerable at the MT levels, and they want to see a similar analysis to the IM levels. And so the answer is yes, they do want the GSAs to mitigate the dry wells. It's unclear. You know, no decisions have been made about what exactly the financial responsibility is going to be. That is a policy question, and that is something that will be worked through by the GSAs going forward.
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up. That's huge.
Yeah.
The wells have been going dry for years with overdraft, and unfortunately, it's the landowners that have borne the cost in the past. And under Sigma, it seems that DWR is pushing for something different, and I'm sure they're being pushed by some probably disadvantaged communities and others and small well landowners that get upset, and rightly so, when their wells go dry. But anyway, it's a big deal to me, and I think it's we need to speak frankly and get to the point.
Yeah, in fact, I think I agree with everything you said. It's a big deal. And when we had our consultation meeting with DWR a couple days ago, Paul Goslin, the deputy director of Sigma at DWR, started talking about his own personal domestic well at his house and what he would do if it went dry. And so this is a big issue for the state, and it's something that the GSAs will be working through.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Not seeing anybody else on the phone. Anybody else in the audience wanna? You mind using the microphone, just that we can get it on. Everybody on the phone can hear you at that point. Pressing the hold the button there. Should turn green.
Okay, I just have a question. As you mentioned reasonable action a few times, and might that be lowering the cost of surface water so it's feasible and we can get the groundwater rebound? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, was that question addressed to me?
I think it was more of a comment.
To every district that has surplus surface water, whether it's MID or OID in the basin. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
It's over there.
Yeah, you can keep it right there next to you if you like.
No, just joking. But I don't see a lot of humor in this place. Anyway, what is an IM?
It's an interim milestone.
Pardon?
It's an interim milestone. So over the 20-year period that we have from the day that we started our plan to 20-year, between that and 20 years later, interim milestones, you have interim milestones every 5 years. So they're basically a way of reporting back to the state to say this is where we expect to be in these interim periods. This is kind of where we expect to be. So in our plan, we expected that we're going to drop off and then we're going to come back up. So our interim milestone is below the minimum threshold, and the minimum threshold is what we don't want to get below, because if we get below that, then we reach undesirable results as are defined in our GSP.
And then that's when they put in the fines and take all our money.
That's when
and take
impacts occur.
control of the wells, right?
That's when impacts occur, and we could go into probation, and yeah. So hopefully we don't get there.
Basically, being that we've been at this for 60 years already. Is there any analysis of this strata profiles between each well and between each, I guess, aquifer per se? Because obviously that would be a factor in how the groundwater moves. Is there any analysis of the strata?
The short answer is yes, and we'll definitely be going into more detail on that in the presentation that's under item.
So that's under a factor of each well is being monitored.
We're monitoring many wells. We have a well monitoring network. We're not monitoring every single well, but we have a well monitoring network out there. We'll show you some exhibits of that, and we have different aquifers set up, and there is an analysis in the GSP.
And so how is this strata evaluated? Because if I drill a hole here, it tells me what strata is there. But if I drill a hole over here, it could be totally different.
Yeah.
So how many holes are you drilling to evaluate the strata?
I think we can probably go into detail in the presentation. You'll see kind of what that.
And
Some
what
of the details
projects
there.
do we have underway? You mentioned that there were projects underway.
So there are a couple projects underway. I know MID right now is working through probably the environmental analysis still, right?
We're done.
You're done?
We'll see rapid under our programmatic environmental impact report, so.
Working through providing.
applications now.
Yeah, so one of the projects is with MID, another one, OID, similar projects where surface water, when there's surplus surface water available, we're making it available to out of district lands that are solely reliable currently on groundwater. So that's two projects. There's other projects as well, but that's a couple. They're listed in the GSP though. They are listed in the GSP. A full list is in the GSP.
Is salinity a factor?
Salinity, go ahead, Liz. Salinity is one of or saltwater intrusion is one of the sustainability indicators that is reported on in the GSP. You want to elaborate on that, Liz?
Yeah, that's one of the sustainability indicators, but we in the GSP indicated that that was not applicable to the sub-basin because it's an inland basin and we don't have worries about seawater intrusion.
Now, if you're worried about water quality in general, then there's a water quality section as well. So I'm not sure if you're talking about seawater intrusion or just salinity. And
I'm talking about saltwater intrusion.
okay, yeah.
What is your analysis of the CO2 sequestration wells that are planned to go in the Keys area and in the riverbank area? And the impact on the water quality in the upper aquifers? What's your analysis on that impact?
Is that a question for me?
I don't have an answer.
I am not, we have not done an analysis on that. So I'm not familiar with that.
Are you aware of those wells?
I was not aware of those wells, no.
We're not a well permitting agency, so those wells go through the state or go through the county. So we are made aware of wells going in, and we make them aware essentially that, you know, we have the ability to restrict their pumping if it becomes necessary, things like that. I don't know specifically the wells you're talking about, or if those went in during when the GSP was or the GSA was created. I don't know. I can't speak to those specific wells.
Okay, so you're not aware of them either.
I have heard of them. I'm not aware of them specifically or what our comments are. And we did not analyze them specifically in our plan or
Okay. Thank
potential impacts from those. Yeah. Anything else from anybody in the room? All right. Seeing anybody on the phone either. Okay, so that was a discussion item. That was item number 7, which covered the incomplete determination and the summary of that. So next we're gonna go on to item number 5, since I took 7 out of sequence there. So this item is the proposed approval of the GSP amendment proposal from Todd Groundwater. So this is what Liz talks about the issues first. And now this is probably a good time to pull up your schedule and run through the proposal, if you don't mind, Liz.
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
You can see the schedule. Okay. So this is the schedule, our proposed schedule that was in our proposal to respond to DWR's determination letter and make the corrections. I will say that our proposal is submitted on behalf of us, Todd Groundwater, and our teaming partner, Woodard and Curran. And I believe Dominic is on the line from Woodard and Curran. And so I will briefly go through these tasks that we have laid out in the proposal. Task number 1 is to develop the approach and methodology. This will involve developing a technical memorandum that steps through DWR's determination letter and discusses our approach and methodology for responding to them. Purpose of this is just to make sure that our approach and methodology is, documented and thought through.
Can anybody hear Liz?
Hello? Hello?
I think somebody was not muted.
Okay.
Go ahead. Keep going.
You can hear me though, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. And so that's task 1 is to develop this technical memorandum for the GSAs for review, so that we're all
Microphone muted because I can't hear.
no.
We can hear you and we can hear her. So I don't know if I don't know who that is. I can't tell, but
Can hear you.
sorry, go ahead, Liz. I can't tell who it is, to be honest.
It may be Mike Day, but I'm not positive.
No, he's still there.
Okay, okay. So task 2 is to conduct the well impacts analysis. This is in response to the first deficiency and corrective action. And like I said before, this will involve looking at groundwater elevations in relation to the minimum thresholds and the interim milestones, and the database of wells that we are going to compile throughout the subbasin. And again, the database of wells that we will be compiling, and we discussed this with DWR a couple days ago, will include both all water supply wells, so domestic, irrigation, and municipal. It will be based on publicly available information from DWR's online well completion report portal called Oscar. And it'll also be based on information on wells that we've received from the member agencies. So after we do the well impacts analysis, we will have an idea of how many and where and what types of wells may be vulnerable to becoming dry if groundwater levels dip below the MTs to the IMs. And from that, we'll be using that information to develop a well mitigation plan. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. This will address mitigation, but it will not be a complete plan because the financial questions, the costs, and the funding sources are questions that are going to require time, stakeholder input, and these are policy decisions that will be made. But in the mitigation plan that we provide the state in the revised GSP, we will have to include a commitment to finishing the plan and a timeline for finishing it and implementing it. So they'll want to see, even though it's not complete, they'll want to see a commitment and a time frame for when it will be done. The next task number 4, is the sustainability indicator analysis. This is the last part of the first corrective action. This is where we're going to look at the effect of groundwater levels at the IM levels on other sustainability indicators, such as land subsidence, water quality, and interconnected surface water. And then moving to, I'm sorry, was there someone who has a question?
Nope, not right now. Not
Okay.
that
I'm sorry, I thought I heard something. So task number 5 is to address corrective action number 2. This is an analysis of projects and management actions. And like I said before, this will be a reanalysis and of the existing suite of projects and management actions. The GSAs do not believe that additional projects and management actions are necessary, but we need to reanalyze the ones that we have. We need to provide more quantifiable details. We need to provide a timeline and a commitment to when these will be implemented. So that will be the analysis as part of task 5 in response to corrective action number 2. And so task 6 is the revised GSP. One assumption to this work, and something that we discussed with DWR a couple days ago, is that this revised GSP does not require a 90-day public review period, and therefore doesn't require, an official response to comment period. The GSP did go through that, but this, because it's only 180 days, does not require that and is not part of the Sigma law. So our plan is to provide a draft revised GSP in early to mid-June, provide the GSAs with a couple of weeks to review it, and then we'll be making revisions and finalizing it and submitting it to the state on or before July 16th when it's due. And then our last task involves project management and meetings. There are several types of meetings that are included here on the schedule. There are TAC planning group meetings, which are held monthly, and we are assuming that we will be attending those each month from March through July. There are these GSA meetings like this one, and for the purposes of this proposal, we've assumed that we are going to attend 2 of them towards the end of the schedule in June and July, when we have results of the analyses to present to the public. And there are meetings with DWR. So we had, like I said, our initial meeting with DWR a couple days ago, and they stated a willingness to meet with us as often as we would like. For the purposes of the proposal, we've assumed 3 additional meetings, and these meetings will be used to discuss technical issues that come up during the analyses that we're doing, to talk about results, to talk about methodologies that we're following. They were clear that they can't officially approve anything that we're doing along the way. You know, they can't say, yes, yes, this is exactly the way you should do it, and we're going to approve your, I'm sorry. Did I lose you? Can you hear me? Eric, can you hear me?
You're good. We still hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was getting a phone call.
Sorry
So-
about that, Louise.
Yeah, no.
I was making sure it was your phone. Not something else.
So our proposal assumes that we're going to have 3 meetings, additional meetings with DWR to discuss these technical issues, and we've assumed those are going to happen in March, April, and May. And that's sort of weighted towards the front end of our schedule instead, because that's when we're going to be doing the analysis and needing to talk with them. And then the revised GSP will be submitted in mid-July, on or before July 16th per law. So that's our proposed schedule. And does anybody have any questions?
So first, on the member agencies, questions on the proposal right now? No. No? Okay. Only thing I'll add, so this contract for this, the contract for this proposal is proposed to be done by MID. You're comfortable with that, right, John? And so through our STRGBA GSA MOU, as the coordinator, they can do that as long as they have action from us to have them facilitate that contract. Want to make sure everybody's understanding that and doesn't have an issue with that, questions with that. Okay. That's all for me. We've got one hand up on the phone. Alexis?
Hi. I
Hello.
had a question about the TAC meetings. Which member agencies are on the committee, and are those going to be publicly noticed?
We haven't been publicly noticing those. I can see if we need to or should notice them, but there's 3 member agencies that are part of those meetings. So the city of Modesto, OID, and MID.
Okay.
No one else on the phone? Anybody here in the room? Have any questions? Comments? Yep.
I found it interesting that you said that the DWR cannot or will not approve the plan. Is that correct?
What I meant was they will, after we submit it to them, approve or disapprove of the plan. But along the way, during our consultation meetings with them, they said that they will guide us and give us positive feedback or negative feedback, but they can't say determinatively, yes, you do this and we'll approve your plan. So that's what I meant.
That they will in fact approve it in writing with signatures?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the revised GSP will be submitted to DWR mid-July. They will go through a formal review process, and they will either approve it or they will not approve it in writing. Yeah.
With signatures?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Just a question.
Sure.
Bill Fogarty, East Side Cattle Rancher, and we have some irrigated ground too, and a lot of it is rangeland. I'm a little concerned about, so far, I don't know if this is too early to be talking about that, about cost things coming up. I know the Turlock Basin has brought up a whole proposal. I haven't heard anything about proposals for this. Is this too early to
for me to be bringing this up?
Yeah, so right now, we're just talking about getting a proposal to move in the direction and understand some of the things that you're talking about. So we haven't made any of those decisions, and in this process, we're talking about having a number of meetings to get some public feedback. Considering that's 180 days to get this done, we've even talked to DWR that we may not have a lot of that stuff, the policy type decisions ironed out within the 100 days, but we might have a plan to get there and a schedule to get there. So that's, do you have anything to add to that, Liz?
No, I think what you said hits the nail.
So it's a little early, but you can provide whatever comment you would like now.
I'm just,
Continue.
everyone, Turlock is already have a ballot out and we don't
Yeah.
have anything close to a ballot.
Yeah.
I guess, that raised a bunch of hackles on people on rangeland about being charged money, but if it's too early to be talking about it, then I'm okay with it. I just kind of, why is Turlock so already under the gun?
Yeah.
That's it.
No, that's a great question. So Turlock, when they looked at their plan, and Liz is familiar with that basin as well, and their plan as well. So in the Turlock sub-basin, there's the East Turlock Groundwater Association and Groundwater Sustainability Association. And then there's the West Turlock Groundwater Sustainability Association. And so in that basin, they're unsustainable currently and in overdraft. And the short answer is they don't have enough projects to reach sustainability long-term. Whereas in our GSP, we found that we did have enough projects to bring us to sustainability. So we didn't have to get to those management actions. We just did the projects. So there's PMAs, and you always hear PMAs, projects and management actions. We put projects, but didn't get to the management actions. They had to do both because they've got a big kind of repression over there. They just don't have enough water to close that gap. So now the state wants us to talk about management actions. And so we might be getting to some of the questions and some of the, soliciting that feedback to iron out what those details are. And then thresholds and funding and all the stuff that comes along with that. Good question. Anybody else on the phone? Anybody else in the room? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on for this proposal, to approve the proposal, or entertain a motion either way. About that.
This is item 5.
Yes, item 5. So this is to approve the GSP amendment proposal from Todd Groundwater. Thank you, Mike.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Item number 6. This is electing a 2024 STRGBA GSA chairman and vice chairman. As I noted, MID is the coordinator and is proposed to remain the coordinator unless there's action taken otherwise. So this is for the chairman and the vice chair. Currently, I am serving as chairman, and Jesse from MID is MID, I should just say, is the vice chair.
I make a recommendation to continue this.
No comments for me. No, thanks. I appreciate that. Any other comments on the committee, member agencies? Okay. So that was me as the chair, and then MID, Jesse is the vice chair. Okay. We'll go out to the public on that. Comments from the public on the chair and vice chair. Anybody here? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. All those.
You look pretty shady to me.
Let's
Everybody loves here, but.
make those official comments there.
Yeah.
Both, hopefully, leaving each other out. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oh, I should abstain. I should abstain. I'll abstain.
Someone seconded it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Second. Do I have a second? Hopefully I do. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks. Also, all abstain. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? One abstain. Thank you. Okay, we already covered number 7, so we'll go on to number 8. Item number 8 is the fall 2023 groundwater level analysis. And this is going to be Todd and Woodard and Curran. They're going to go through this for us for you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Arden Wells. I'm a geologist at Todd Groundwater, and I'm going to share my screen real quick and share the fall 2023 water levels with y'all.
This
so
is a sorry to interrupt. This is the
Oh.
PowerPoint that was handed out, or it's available over there. If you don't have it already, feel free to grab that so you can follow along more easily.
Yes, thank you. Alrighty, do y'all see the PowerPoint? Here?
Yes.
Yes, looks good.
All right. Okay, is all the Zoom stuff hidden on it? Or sorry,
Yes, you're
one
good.
second.
Looks good. Oh,
Okay, a little bit of technical.
Nope.
Okay, here
Now
we
you-
go. Now are we good to go?
there we go.
Fantastic. Alrighty, so we were asked by the board to share the fall 2023 water level analyses. And this is not going to be going into the annual report that we're currently working on. That's for fall 22 and spring 2023. However, this is just kind of us giving an update on how the water levels are looking. And most importantly, I'd say sharing some good news about how water levels overall have recovered in response to the recent wet year that we've had. So that's my little spoiler alert that in general, this is a good news presentation. So I'm going to be sharing about our fall 23 GSP monitoring event, and then kind of walk y'all through the water level analyses. And these are draft results. And so we'll look at how fall 23 stacked up to the sustainable management criteria. And then we chose some representative hydrographs that kind of can give a sense of the general trends that we see in each aquifer and each group of interconnected surface water river wells. And then we'll just wrap up putting these results in perspective. So I'll start by providing a little reminder of how undesirable results are defined by the GSP. So for chronic lowering of groundwater levels, the GSP defines undesirable results as when at least 33% of the representative monitoring wells have water levels that are lower than the MT for each principal aquifer for 3 consecutive fall monitoring events. So this doesn't really look at spring. And so we're concerned about fall monitoring events. And additionally, by consecutive, it needs to be 3 years in a row. And if the water levels do have less than 33% of the wells beneath the MT, then it kind of resets in the next year for counting those 3 years. And then for interconnected surface water, it's quite similar. An undesirable result occurs when on one of the rivers, 33% to 50% of the representative monitoring wells for that river are exceeding the MT for 3 consecutive fall monitoring events. So for the Stanislaus and Tuolumne rivers, that's 33%. And then because there are only 2 wells along the San Joaquin River, then it's 50%. So this past fall, this was the 4th GSP monitoring event, and the groundwater elevations were measured in 59 of the representative monitoring wells. We note that 2 of the wells were not measured due to casing obstructions, and that's the Wood well and the Quisenberry well. So to summarize the sustainability criteria this past fall, we create these tables each monitoring event that show the percentage of wells that are above or below the MT. And this is divided by aquifers for the chronic lowering of groundwater levels and the interconnected surface by rivers for the interconnected surface water. There was a question about the hydrogeologic work that went into kind of how we think about management. And in the groundwater sustainability plan, which is publicly available and posted online, we did include a review of the work that we did looking at the hydrogeology that includes creating cross sections, and these were using the drilling logs and stratigraphic data that was publicly available in the basin. So we did define the different aquifer units and create our sustainability criteria based on the hydrogeology in the basin. So we can see for all 3 aquifers and all 3 rivers for interconnected surface water, none of them had greater than 33% of the wells below the MT. So that means that none of these areas kind of triggered the sustainability concerns that we need 3 years in a row in order to have undesirable results. So in a sense, this is a little bit like a reset. And this is showing that there was a response to the past wet year in every aquifer and every river area that we're worried about in our management criteria. And then for the interim milestones, we also will note that there are 14 wells that had interim milestones, and none of the wells had water levels that were beneath the IMs in fall 2023. Similarly, for interconnected surface water, there are 5 wells that have IMs, and none of the wells had water levels that were lower than their IM during fall 2023. So now I am going to kind of go aquifer by aquifer, and then for interconnected surface water, go by river to kind of show our summaries for each aquifer unit or principal aquifer in the subbasin and our results over fall 2023, and then show some representative hydrographs. So in the western upper principal aquifer, there were no representative monitoring wells that were below the MT. And many of the wells were above the measurable objectives. And this is in comparison to fall 2022, when 1 representative monitoring well was below the MT. And I'll also just note that the western upper principal aquifer, it's shown in this map. We have the line delineating the extent of the Corcoran clay, and these are wells that are screened above the Corcoran clay. So the well that was in fall 2022 below the MT is the Caden 69 well. And the hydrograph is shown here, and you can see it on the western end of the western upper principal aquifer. And so we saw in fall 2022 that the water levels dipped a good bit beneath the MT. But in this past year, during 2023, the water levels increased. And now it's in fall 2023, it was above the measurable objective. And then if we look on the eastern end of the western upper principal aquifer, this is showing North Avenue 103 well. And this is pretty representative of the other representative monitoring wells in the area. And we saw that there was a slight dip in fall 2022, but it wasn't below the MT. And then we saw the water levels increase again in 2023 and be relatively stable. So now this is showing the wells in the western lower principal aquifer. And so in fall 2023, 20% of the representative monitoring wells were below the MT. So 1 out of 5 wells was below the MT. And this is the same well that was below the MT in fall 2022. So first I'll show MOD MWB2, which is a monitoring well that's in the northeastern side of this aquifer. And this is just showing that, there is a bit of fluctuation in this well from year to year and season to season. And in fall 2022, the water levels were a good bit lower. However, they did increase in 23 above the MT. And then looking at MW2D, this is a well that the water levels did recover in 2023, but there was a slight decrease from spring 23 to fall 23. So in fall 23, the water level was just slightly beneath the MT. However, this is 1 of 5 and puts the groundwater conditions in this aquifer as being below 33% of the representative monitoring wells, having the water levels lower than the MT in fall 23, which makes it kind of not a mark against this area under the sustainability management criteria for this fall. So now we are looking at the Eastern Principal Aquifer. So in the Eastern Principal Aquifer, there are 30% of the wells in fall 2023 with water levels that were beneath their MTs. So this is beneath the limit of 33%. So this does not kind of trigger the concerns for undesirable results, or this is not a year that will count towards the undesirable result consecutive years and kind of resets it. There were 26 wells with water levels that were above the MT, and you can see by the wells with sort of the green halo in this map that most of these wells tend to be in the western side of the Eastern Principal Aquifer. And then there were 11 wells that had water levels that were lower than the MT. This is in contrast to fall 2022, where 21 wells had water levels beneath the MT. And so it was 57% of all wells with water levels beneath the MT in fall 2022. And now it's just 30%. We'll also note that in this aquifer, the 2 wells, Wood and Quisenberry, that were not measured this past fall. They're both in the Eastern Principal Aquifer. And then there are 14 of the representative monitoring wells that have IMs, and 13 of them had water qualities above, and 1 of those wells was not measured in this past monitoring event. So now I'll kind of go from west to east, showing the hydrographs for representative wells in this aquifer. So this is showing American 208, which is in the northwest side of the Eastern Principal Aquifer. And so in fall 2022, the water level was right beneath the MT. But in spring 2023, we observed a rebounding water level and then a slightly further increase in fall 2023. So this is showing a positive response to the past wet year. Now, if we go a little bit more east, this is Bentley OID 02. And so in fall 2022, we saw water levels beneath the MT. And there was a slight increase in overall in 2023, in spring 2023. It increased, but then there was a slight decline from spring to fall. We note that this is much less of a decline than we typically see from season to season, but it still put the water level right below the MT. And then this is showing the Paulsell 1 well. And the water year 2023 levels were both beneath the MT. And then from spring 2023 to fall 2023, the groundwater level continued to decline. This unfortunately is pretty typical, or this pattern was observed in other wells in the vicinity, such as the other Paulsell wells. And these are wells that we have discussed as being screened in the Merton Formation. But several wells, we did observe a further decline from spring to fall 2023 and a further decline from the minimum threshold. And so we just want to note that even though it was a wet year, production continued in this area, and the recharge is not really being observed as being a rebounding effect of the water levels, despite it being a wet year this past year. So now I'll discuss the interconnected surface water levels in fall 2023. So we grouped these by river, by the San Joaquin River, which has 2 wells, neither of which had water levels below the MT, so 0% below. And then along the Stanislaus River, there are 8 total wells, and 2 wells, the most eastern wells, had water levels that were beneath the MT, putting a total of 25% of the wells below the MTs. And then along the Tuolumne River, 1 of 9 wells showed water levels beneath the MT, so that's 11% below. And I want to note the contrast between fall 2023 and fall 2022. Along the Stanislaus River, there were 75% of the wells had water levels beneath the MT. And also along the Tuolumne River in fall 2022, 56% of the wells had water levels below the MT. We see in these shallow interconnected surface water monitoring wells that they tend to respond pretty quickly to the precipitation over the past year. And these wells are pretty dynamic, and they're pretty sensitive to what the recent water year has been. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, this is Liz. Can you back up one slide? I just wanted to, a question came up earlier about which wells along the rivers had the interim milestones. And just wanted to point out that these colors on this map are the different management areas in the subbasin. And so the light blue color is the Oakdale Irrigation District management area. And so there are 3 wells that are along the Stanislaus River that have IMs, Marquis, Allen, and Birnbaum. And then along the Tuolumne River, there are 2 wells, Quisenberry and MW9, and these are both in the non-district east management areas. So those are the 5 wells that have IMs along the rivers, along the Stanislaus and Tuolumne rivers. And there are none that have IMs along the San Joaquin. So sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, thank you for that. Great. So, yeah, I'll just walk through representative hydrographs for each river. Along the San Joaquin, the river Canfield 90 shows that water levels increased throughout 2023, and spring showed an increase, and then fall 23 was a further increase in the water level, well above both the MT but also the measurable objective. If we look along the Stanislaus River, we see in the Birnbaum well, there is a good bit of seasonality. So typically higher concentrations in the spring than in the fall. And in the 2023 seasonal decline was less than is usually observed, but it did put the water level right below the minimum threshold at this well. And then finally, looking at the lateral 1 well, we see that the water level was beneath the MT in fall 2022, but then it rose in spring 23 and then rose a little bit further in fall 23. So I just want to summarize putting these results into perspective. First, overall, this is great news. The fall 2023 monitoring event did show that water levels have recovered a good bit over the past year. And this is, a recovery after 2 consecutive critically dry years. We also observed that some of the wells in the Eastern Principal Aquifer did continue to show further decline, despite the fact that this past year did have wet conditions. In every area that we look at, the MT exceedances were below that 33% or 50% threshold to trigger undesirable results. And we think of this as sort of a reset for the sustainability criteria to trigger those undesirable results. So none of the areas had 33% exceedances in 3 consecutive fall events for chronic lowering of groundwater. And then we didn't see 33% or 50% exceedances for interconnected surface water. So this kind of resets that 3-year mark for sustainability criteria. And finally, we did not observe that any of the wells had water levels that were lower than the IMs. So with that, I would like to invite any questions.
Thank you, Arden. One thing I will say first is that, so just to clarify everybody, so everybody understands, these are the fall 2023 groundwater levels. Our annual report, which we'll talk about the schedule for that next and is due here coming up soon. The water years from October 1st to the end of September. So these fall 2023 water levels, even though they look better than fall 2022, we're not going to be reporting on them in this annual report. It looks, and one of the reasons I think potentially one of the influences in DWR's decision for us in this basin in finding us incomplete and not just giving us some corrective action and things to work on and for the 5-year update is that we're farther from the 5-year update than some of the other basins, and we're in the last 2 years we've already started to see levels that, because of the dry years, we've seen levels that were more significantly, drops more significant than we had originally anticipated. So this will be good. I mean, this is great because it resets that time clock, that 3-year time clock. I think when we do the amendment, it will be good to make sure that they realize that we saw some rebound this year, even though we won't be pointing it out necessarily in the annual report we're doing here over the next month or so. So, any other comments from the member agencies here first?
What's the time frame on the annual?
We're going to go through that. Next item is exactly that. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Anybody in the room? Comments? Getting your steps in today, see?
Yeah, I've worked around the world on different projects, but probably most impressively was Nevada. They have a complete list of their aquifers, and they have a comprehension on how many acre feet each aquifer will replenish in a typical season. And based on that information, that's what everybody pumps, because we all understand we do not want to pump our groundwater down. So in any of this data, is subsidence a consideration? Because it seems to me like some of these aquifers will replenish. But is there a point where you don't want to pump it down in consideration that once you get some subsidence, then obviously then the capacity of that aquifer is lessened? So is any evaluation in your calculations here with subsidence?
Okay,
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
I'll start off if you don't mind. So subsidence is one of the sustainability indicators in the GSP, and we do report on it in the GSP. That's not part of this analysis, because this is just reporting specifically on groundwater levels in 2023, fall 2023. So that kind of reporting would come both in the annual report, but mainly in the GSP, and that is one of the things we report and monitor. Yes.
Well, I'd be interested to see, because obviously if you pump it way down, then the soil is going to subside, then that reduces the capacity of the aquifer. So you don't want to do that. So at what level do you not want to go down? Period. And this is my first comment. From all of this work, is there any extrapolation on how many cubic or acre feet of water are replenished in each aquifer as a baseline for pumping?
So again, that is part of the GSP, not part of this item, the fall water level analysis. This is strictly reporting on the fall water levels and what the trends are. That would be definitely in the GSP report on that. There's a sustainable yield in the aquifer, and we know what we need to get to and what we're doing today. Good, and then in our model, that's how we came up with the projects being able to close that gap. We know what that number is. So in the annual report, we kind of report back on what we originally came up with in the GSP, and it's kind of a progress report. So this is just something above and beyond that to give us an idea of where we were at most recently, because we take water levels twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. And the fall is when we determine whether we're reaching those undesirable results or not. So you kind of see the rebound in the spring after the winter, and you see the drop down in the fall. So this is just specifically on the fall 2023.
Right. So to make that evaluation, do you have any idea how much water you are pumping?
Yes.
Yes,
So then you have.
all
those- you have
quantified in the
those
GSP.
factors.
Yes,
So knowing how much water you pump, you can make a calculation.
yes.
How do you think conservation has impacted groundwater?
It's one of the things that's considered in one of the projects and one of the management actions that you can take. So we've considered it, and it can impact it. Let's put it that way. I don't have a, that's the short answer.
Well, my assessment is that it's a negative. Because we used to flood irrigate. And I know in Nevada, again, they have different values for water usage by cattle, orchards, pastures, row crops. They all use a different amount of water in flooding. So, in fact, it was a friend of mine who came along with micro irrigation. So we conserved water with micro irrigation. So what did we stop doing? We stopped flood irrigating. So what did that do? Deprive the water to impermeate, go down to or permeate down into the groundwater. So we shot ourselves in the head, not the foot, the head. And so then where did all that water go? Oh. So now the state has more water to take, right? They don't purchase it, they take it, confiscate it. And I'm always looking at you, I'm not sure why, I guess because you're the chairman. Maybe he's the best looking in that crowd. No, I said earlier, but so where did that water go? Well, the state confiscated and put it down the river for what? Fish. Does anybody have any idea of the legality of using water for fish? I'll inform you. Thanks for asking, by the way. But the Organic Management Act of 1897, which established the U.S. Forest Service, that was established, or that was passed in Congress for two purposes. Number one, the constant supply of lumber, for which since the 60s we have failed. So rather than using the lumber and generating billions, if not trillions of dollars economy, we let it burn up. And then we complained about the carbon dioxide, which is required for growth. And then the other thing, the water, the constant supply of water. And that act says that that water is not for, and I will repeat, the water that comes out of the mountains is not for aesthetics, recreation, or fish. And that law is still enacted. So when we allow them to put the water down the river for the fish, it's totally unlawful, people. So we must stand up and say, no, this is over. Bass are not indigenous to the Delta. I don't like bass anyway, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I just had a couple of questions on the data. I'm not sure if I'm understanding it. These last numbers that we went over are for the fall 2023 years.
Correct.
Okay, so these reset the
3-year timeline.
gotcha.
It's got to be 3 years in a row.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we had 1 year, this would have been 2, and then we would have, if we had 3 years in a row, would have been this fall coming up, fall 2024. And then we would have technically been into undesirable results in accordance with our definition.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else in the room? Okay. Seeing nothing, none on the phone either. All right. Well, yeah, sure.
Uh, So is there any way to measure how much water during these wet years and how it gets down into the aquifer from the rivers, or what way it does? That would seem, if we knew that, then we would. Yeah, I don't know what we could do to make it rain all the time, but maybe that would be really good knowledge. Because Nevada is way different than ours. Out in eastern of this aquifer, it's hard pan. That is really sediment, lots of layers that can permeate, water can go down. A lot of that country out east of here, it can't permeate. So anyway, different deal.
So the answer is yes. The model that was developed for the GSP and is updated every year for the annual report does include stream flow interaction with the groundwater. And so that is quantified in the annual reports. And so will be quantified for the annual report that we're submitting to the state by April 1st for water year 2023. We're working on that now.
All right.
Hopefully I don't have to get up, but the elevation.
We figured that out for us.
People treatment under the wall.
There you go. The elevations that you denoted that those last graphs off to the left, are those actual topographical elevations, or are they just unilateral number that you use just for gauging purposes?
Right. There, go ahead and list.
Oh, so those are groundwater elevations that are based on two things. One is a measurement from the well head to the top of the water. So it's a measurement of the depth to water. And then that's subtracted from the known elevation of the top of the well. And so it is actual elevation of the groundwater surface.
It's actual elevation, so you can actually see the ground surface on each of these, and
Right.
different numbers, and then the measurement down is from.
Just,
So for example,
just from that, but it doesn't correlate to an elevation on the actual ground per se.
No, you-
Just to the well itself.
Right, sea level. Yep.
It is sea level, right?
Yeah, sea level. Yep.
Got one more.
Yep.
I think, obviously, good news is that we've reset the 3-year clock, if you will. But I think another takeaway from looking at the data is the overall trend line, and we're in trouble. In a lot of areas, we're still in trouble. We got a bit of a reprieve because we had a 200 this year. That said, thank you, God, but we still have work to do.
Yeah, I think that's really evident in both the wells that are close to the river, because we had water running down the river this year, a lot more than we did, a lot more duration of that occurring too. And then the other thing you really see in this is that drop in specifically that wholesale well that's farthest to the east. I mean, there's just no sign of recovery there. So definitely highlights the problem that we have being in that non-district east area. Good point.
working on some sort of also.
Yeah, there's a Paulso lateral expansion project, try and get more water out to, well, not only surface water, yeah, to not only our constituents out there, but some of these non-district east lands in that out of district program that we're doing.
So that may then help as well.
Yeah, that's the intent. Yeah, absolutely.
But there are plans in place for work.
Yeah. Yep.
That's one. I just want to make a comment on what you just said, because there's some people up here that I've seen the river flows, because during the summer, natural flow was 0 down these rivers. 0. And you younger people haven't ever seen that, so you just presume that water is always running 4 feet deep. All that flow during the summer is not natural. It is not natural, it is man-made, thanks to MID and TID, putting dams on the river. But of course, if we had to do it today, I think we put dams alongside the river so we can maintain salmon rather than trying to do it backwards. But anyway, yeah, the natural flow is 0 down these rivers. So all the water during the summer you see going down the river is not natural, it is for the fish, and it's not lawful. Why? Inorganic Management Act of 1897.
Anybody else?
I have a question in regards to, probably should have brought it up earlier as we were talking about the plan and the modification to the plan. What was the consideration, if any, that was given to projects available for the headwaters in increasing total available water?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Increasing like storage upstream on the river, or what are you thinking of?
Yeah, forest management and increased evapotranspiration in the forest, increased infiltration based upon increased area for snowpack, these kinds of mitigations. And in addition, any kind of laterals or infrastructure that could provide that water in high season flows for recharge down in the groundwater basin.
Well, I will say that that is further upstream from the subbasin. And so the projects and management actions that were in the GSP are focused on the subbasin. And so do not look up into the headwaters portion of the watershed. I don't know I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and we also had a call for projects, so we asked for ideas like that. So a little late, but we can come back and start doing those kinds of things. I wouldn't recommend it it'd be probably something we want to do in the GSP, the update. We can call for projects again and think about that kind of stuff, the outside the box thinking. I like that. But in the amendment, what we want to do is get away from putting new projects into the amendment, because then we'd have to run the model again. And it's a lot more costly and a lot more time consuming. So it's probably not something we're in the amendment, but something to think about in the future. Anything else? No, okay. That was item 8. Thank you. Item 9. So this is the 2023 water year annual report schedule. And Liz, do you mind pulling that up for us and about that, walking us through kind of the plan there?
Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. You can see the schedule clearly.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the schedule for the annual report for water year 2023. Again, just to reiterate, water year 2023 includes the fall 2022 monitoring event, as well as the spring 2023 monitoring event. It does not include the monitoring event that Arden just presented on, which was done in the fall of 2023, just recently. So this is our schedule for completing the annual report. Annual report by law is due to the State Department of Water Resources on April 1st or before. And so this schedule kind of breaks out the two different types of things that we're doing. One is kind of a schedule for the report, and one is a schedule for meetings. Start out with report. These dates are circled in red on the calendar, and you'll see in March, it's full of red circles. Because on March 1st, we are going to be submitting a draft of this annual report to the GSA. Comments will be provided by the GSA a week later on the 8th. And then we'll be making revisions to the report and submitting it for public review on the 14th of March, with comments due on the 20th. Then we'll make final revisions and have a final report by the 26th. And we'll be ready to submit it after the 27th, when we have the GSA meeting. The meetings include TAC planning group meetings as well as GSA meetings. We had our first annual report related TAC planning group meeting last week on February 5th. And our next one is planned for March 6th, after we provide the GSA with the draft annual report. During this meeting, we'll just be discussing the draft annual report. And then we're going to have a GSA meeting on the 13th of March to review the draft annual report. We'll also be having sort of an internal team kickoff meeting. I think this meeting on the 13th we will be there, consultant team will be there in person. And then on the 20th, we have another TAC planning group meeting, if necessary, to review any public comments that were received. And then the final meeting is a GSA meeting on March 27th, where the GSA will approve the final annual report. And then following this meeting, we will submit it. So that is where we're at. We are feverishly working on the annual report. We're updating the model. We're doing the analyses. We're writing the text. And in just little over 2 weeks, we will have a draft to the GSA. So anybody have questions about the schedule?
So it's gonna be a pretty quick turnaround for this as well. Jennifer, hopefully she should be listening too. So we'll have that March 6th meeting, March 13th meeting, which is our typical meeting. And then we'll end up having that special meeting on the 27th. So she'll send out a calendar invite for that, so we all have it on our calendars. But we need to hopefully, we'll definitely need a quorum to be able to pass this. And then when we get the draft, we need to really need to make sure we're focusing on turning that around. Any comments we have. Since we've done this a couple times, shouldn't be, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of comments, but obviously we're gonna read through and try to get any comments we have incorporated into the plan, the amendment there, or the annual report. The most updated annual report here, 2023 water report. Anything else from the member agencies here? Questions on the schedule, comments, concerns? Nope. Members of the public, questions on the annual report? All right. Nobody on the phone either? Okay, we'll move on to number 10, to the next meeting. It's gonna be the 13th of March, 1:30. We'll offer the opportunity for everybody to come back in person here, no ID, but also over Zoom. Appreciate the participation today. It's interesting to see when things like this occur, how many people come out and join in, so I like that. Anything else in the next meeting? Questions, comments on that from the member agencies here? No? Anybody else in the room, on the phone? All right. Last but not least, items too late for the agenda or any kind of committee member comments? No? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. See you next time.